All right, I want to welcome everybody to another episode of the Shadows Podcast. I'm your host, Trip Bodenheimer, and today I am excited to have with us Dr. Amanda Barrientez, and did I say it right that time?
You did. Well, actually, you broke up and I couldn't hear what you said. So it's perfect.
I hope it didn't break up on my
I know.
end.
I wonder. Let's see. I'm realizing. I know. Sorry I don't want you to have to start over, but I'm realizing maybe I don't know if it's you or me, but you timed out.
We do have a little thunderstorm coming through.
Yeah. Let's see. I'll check I'll close everything I can, but it could be on your end. Let's see here. Okay. On my end, I should be good, but yeah, there we go.
So we'll never know if I said it right or wrong.
Yeah. I don't know.
I did. But she is the money healer. She's the founder of NFA, No Fucking Around Money. And we'll definitely get into that title. I'm sure listeners are probably like, ooh, I'm sure someone is like, wow, how in the world did that fight? Well, we'll talk about that. And then incredible story going from food stamps to building a 6-figure business. Ma'am, welcome to the Shadows Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
And for our listeners out there, where are you located?
Today I'm in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
So nice. Garden of the Gods.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Really beautiful.
We have a thunderstorm right now. So it may have been my end that we were having. Yeah, it is ugly over here. I'm definitely jealous of you for your location that you're currently at. But let's go ahead and get started putting you through some 5 rounds questions here.
Yeah,
First
let's do
one. Biggest fear?
Snakes.
Snake, really?
Yes and no. I run a lot in the forest, like trail running. And so every once in a while I'll run into a snake. And then for weeks I'll be like paranoid about snakes. So I'd say that's my biggest fear.
That's like the worst thing when you go running outside and you like your mind starts to play tricks on you and you're thinking like, and then like you see twigs and everything and
yeah.
Okay.
That's the first thing that came to mind, so I had to say it.
Okay. Go-to music.
Classical, usually. Often because I'm working while I listen. And so I like to just have the nice vibe setting and love it. Yeah.
Okay.
Classical.
What's that one song that just like, this is a bonus question, non-classical, but like that guilty pleasure artist that you probably listen to?
I have like a guilty pleasure playlist. That's like, just hardcore music that, when I'm at home and ready to raise my vibe and also kind of like in an intense mood. I have a whole playlist.
Was it like War or something?
Yeah, I used to listen to like Stone Temple Pilots and like, just not that crazy, but like Black Sabbath, there are a couple Black Sabbath songs on there and, just a mix of loud, raucous music.
Okay.
Yeah.
Book recommendation for our listeners.
Oh, the current book I'm reading that I love that I'm actually doing a couple masterminds with is Happy Pocket Full of Money. So A Happy Pocket Full of Money by David Gakandi. I think it's one of those, it's, I would say if it's your first round with things like quantum physics, not that it goes that deep into that. It's about attraction and manifestation. And it's talking about how we can create our happiest life by understanding how quantum physics works. So he breaks it down. And, when you read it, you might need to read the chapters a couple times, some of them. And then it's just got gems of wisdom all over the place.
Okay. We will have that book listed under our book recommendations on our website. You have 2 plane tickets and you get to use both of them. One, you can return somewhere that you've been before. The other one, somewhere you've never been.
These are great questions. I love this. So return somewhere. Oh man, right now I would probably choose Hawaii. Just relax. I got married in Hawaii in October and it was like,
nice.
Just such a relaxing, easy, fun, flowing trip. And then somewhere I've never been, I am looking forward to going to Ireland. It's on my list.
Ireland ends up on this show a lot. Where exactly in Ireland are you looking to go?
I don't care. Anywhere in Ireland.
It's nice.
Yeah. Just that green. And I just have like a visualization of it that's really lovely. And it sounds fun.
We went to Dublin and everybody talks about going over there and doing Guinness and
of course.
We went to Trinity College and went to the library. And you could just smell the age of those books. It was actually they say that the smell from the glue in the books kind of gets to you. You hallucinate a little bit if you're in there too long, but I loved it. It's incredible to look at.
That's awesome. I would say that's probably why everyone wants to go there or a lot of people say that, because everyone that goes there says the same thing about it. At least from my experience, they're like, it's awesome. You definitely need to go.
Yeah. It's a cool city.
Yeah.
All right. And then last one, dinner for 3 individuals who are no longer with us. And they can't be family members. Who would you choose?
Oh, Debbie Ford, which a lot of people probably won't know, but she's the person, actually, you'll appreciate this because of the shadows. She coined the term shadow work, which is from Carl Jung, but she's really mainstreamed it. So Debbie Ford, would have loved to hang out with her.
Okay.
Boy, this is a fun one. I mean, it's interesting. The people that come to mind aren't necessarily not alive anymore. The people that I'd want to sit and hang out with. This is going to sound funny, but I would love to sit with Hitler and talk to him and understand his thinking. And like, I mean, one of my favorite things to do is understand the human puzzle, like the mind, the way our minds work. So I'd love to sit and understand his thinking
about as extreme a puzzle as you can get.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So that would be a good one. Very different answer probably than a lot of people give. Third. Wow. I like these provocative questions because usually I just have a snap to answer. It's interesting that no one's coming to mind. I mean, the person who comes to mind who is alive that I'd want to hang out with is Oprah. I actually have dreams about her a lot where we're like friends and talking and hanging out. Yeah.
We'll allow Oprah. What makes Oprah come to mind?
For me, I think because she's a powerful woman who has transformed the world in big ways. And she was one of those models for me as a kid where, there weren't that many powerful women on TV. And I just didn't have very many models, especially of women of color, doing anything in the world that was powerful like that. And so she was one of those that stood out in my mind as like, there's a powerful woman and I would love to be like her. I felt that way as a kid about her.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
yeah.
You survived our 5 rounds. So good job with that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to jump into your journey. And just as I mentioned, went from food stamps to building a 6-figure business. I mean, incredible story. And first thing is tell our listeners about your upbringing in Colorado.
Wow. Yeah. I grew up in Summit County. So for people who know Summit County, it's like the ski area where everybody goes to ski. So like Breckenridge, Keystone, Copper. But when I went there, my dad had moved there because he was a water delivery guy and there was no one up there doing it. And at the time it was like tiny, tiny community. So as I grew up and lived there over my life course, it changed a lot. Like there was only one paved road in Frisco, Colorado. It would, now there's like Walmarts and factory stores and Home Depot and all the things. We had none of that. Like it was just this tiny little town with one chairlift at Keystone. And I could ride the bus to Keystone, like by myself with my friends. And we would they would take I didn't snowboard yet, but they would take us skiing during the school week. Like one day a week, we would go skiing for fun. So that was childhood there. It was good. Lots of nature.
What were some of your aspirations as a child?
I thought I wanted to be a surgeon because my dad he ended up going into real estate and we were at this showing one day and this house had like a climate controlled room with like button you could push to have it rain or snow and all this. I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I was like, Dad, how did these people get this house? He's like, well, you got to be a surgeon. So it planted this idea in my mind that I wanted to be a surgeon. So for a long time, that's what I wanted. I was thinking I was going to go that direction. And then I hung out with my uncle, who was an anesthesiologist on my dad's side of the family. And he was like, don't do it. He told me all the downfalls of his, history of working as a doctor. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. So then I had a long twisting journey that led me to entrepreneurship.
Start kind of taking us through that journey a little bit. Like, what was next for you when you realized, like, okay, that's not exactly what I want to do?
Yeah. So I grew up fundamentalist Christian. And so when I went to school, I was very in odd ways, I was very sheltered.
Mm-hmm.
And so my childhood was probably different than a lot of people's. And when I got to school, I definitely was quite wild. And I got pregnant my sophomore year of college and dropped out. And I got married. And so we were married for 15 years and had 3 kids. And then I ended up leaving that marriage, having an affair. My next relationship wasn't working out. And so this is really the start of my entrepreneurial journey. I was on the floor crying one night, just looking out at this empty basement where my boyfriend had moved out. And I had spent the day on Craigslist looking for houses, and I couldn't afford anything because I had 3 kids. I was in grad school, and I was like, I can't afford anything. Like, this is scary. And my free counselor had already talked me into going on food stamps. So I had a lot of shame and, embarrassment around it. And so I'm crying on the floor, just going like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And no one's coming to rescue me. Like, I better figure this out. And I had that epiphany of like, what's the common denominator here? What's the problem? And I realized it was me. I was like, I got to fix myself. This doesn't work. And so it led me to listening to podcasts, because I thought, I'm going to do whatever it takes to learn how to have a healthy relationship and make more money. And so I started listening to podcasts because I was really busy. So, I'd be riding my bike to school, listening to podcasts, driving my kids to school, listening to podcasts, washing dishes, listening to podcasts. And I started to learn that relationships are a skill, and that you can have a good one if you just learn how to have a good one. Yeah. And I was blown away. I was like, oh my gosh. And it started to change myself from the inside out. Like, the way that I was thinking started to change, and it started to change how I parented and taught. I was teaching at university at the time, and I was just transforming. And I always think the universe works in magical ways, and in a lot of ways it's law of attraction and like universal laws. And what happened at the same time in my program where I was earning my PhD in sociology is we had this national news fallout. Like, professors in my department were leaving and people were stressed. And I was like, I don't want to be a professor anymore, which is what I had spent years in school working toward. Yeah. And so, I had that connective thought of all of the podcasts I'm listening to are done by coach type people, and they're making money helping people by teaching what they're learning and helping people like learn skills that we all need. And I was like, maybe I should just be a coach. And so I decided to finish my degree. And then, I was like, okay, I'm going to take the leap and become a coach and see what happens. And if I can't make it, I can always fall back and do something else, but I'm going to go for it. And in that first year, I ended up building my business to 6 figures. So it's been, since then, just growth and a lot of incredible learning and helping people heal their money stories and their relationship to money.
Where were you going to college at?
CU Boulder.
Okay. Yep. The Buffaloes.
Yeah.
Okay. And looking back at that, I mean, you talked about some obstacles and some adversity that you had to face, especially during that first marriage. Looking back, what are some things you really learned about yourself?
During the marriage?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Looking back, I learned that I was very victim-minded about a lot of things. Like, I always blamed everyone else for my circumstances. So, I left that marriage having an affair. And even in that, I was like, it's his fault that I did that. Like, I had a really hard time owning responsibility. And I felt very victimized by my childhood and, certain ways that I grew up. And I just felt like everyone else was to blame for the reason that I was stuck. And so that was a huge lesson for me. Yeah.
And when you said you were lying on the floor crying, what was it really that got you to that realization that I got to change? Because that's tough for people to, self-diagnose themselves and realize that, gosh, take accountability. And we talk about it all the time with feedback and with growth, is that you got to look in the mirror first. But what do you think it was that made you realize I'm the one that needs to change here?
Like severe pain, like sitting in that moment of like, wow, my life sucks. It was like pain and fear. It's like, it's scary to be in a place where you're going like, I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know if I can make it. I have no one to support me. My family couldn't come up with money for me. My ex-husband didn't have a job. The boyfriend that just moved out, we're on the outs. So like, I'm just going like, I got to figure this out myself. Like and it was such a gift, like huge gift. I look back and that was the moment that really changed a lot for me in my life, where I completely started to change what I was doing and how I was feeling, what I was thinking. And it was the next quest of discovery of becoming more empowered, which at that time I felt very disempowered.
And then talk to us about how you got into being like a business consultant. How did that come about?
Yeah. So it was a winding road. I thought I was going to step into being a relationship coach because that's what led me to that path. And so I started going to all these networking events, and everyone at a networking event is an entrepreneur. And so as I was at these networking events talking about, figuring out how to market myself, I would just kind of say in my, 30-second commercial for people who've been to networking events, like that you've got to come up with like a 30-second commercial. And so I'd be at them and I'd be like, oh, I got to come up with something on the fly because I don't even know what that is. And so I would just say kind of whatever came to me in the moment. And often I would say, it started with like, if you're feeling stuck, I can help you get unstuck. And people would come talk to me and I'd be like, interesting, yeah. And then what I would do is set up a coffee meeting, and we would just have a really powerful conversation. And I started going to workshops and learning tools. And I was like, I could like in one conversation, I could help people have these massive breakthroughs. And they would, at the end of the conversation, they would say, how can I work with you? And I'd be like making up a package on the fly. Like, oh, here's what I do. Ask. Exactly. And it worked. And I just kept going with it, and so it very quickly transitioned into helping entrepreneurs. And I would just work with, any area you're stuck. And I called it my NFA transformation package. Yep. And we would work together for 10 hours. And I would say, I'll just help you get unstuck any problem you bring to me, basically. And then I started to see patterns in that. And, money came in obviously because I started to share my story of where I had gone and how I was building my business. And every person that I would work with, I started to have them do money stories because I had started this wealth building mastermind group with some friends and who are all interested in building their wealth. And I had written a money story, and I was like, we all need to write our money stories because it's such a powerful process. And they did it, and it was very transformative. And so I started having my clients do that. And I started to see these patterns and overlaps in the way that people thought about money and how it would translate into challenges in their businesses. And so that really led me down the road of being a money coach for coaches, really, in a lot of ways, coaches and entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And you mentioned like helping people get unstuck, like outside of just money, what are some things that people would typically come to you?
It's always about self-doubt, fear, uncertainty about their future, feeling imposter syndrome, procrastination. All of these things are related to low self-confidence. And people don't know that or think that. Most people will say, I'm confident. And then when I sit with them and start working through things, it just shines through that they're scared and they don't know what they want. And the reason they don't know what they want is because they've listened to what other people have told them they should want. And, we just get told so many stories about what we're supposed to be. And so it's like unmasking that and helping people discover their true selves is a powerful process that always leads to more money because you become more magnetic and you become more alive and more vibrant. And when you're doing what you love and you're exchanging value from a place of doing what you love, money is an automatic outcome of that.
Yeah. I like what you said there about the unmasking piece. We're doing season 2 of Rise from the Shadows coming up, and our theme is Behind the Mask.
Ooh,
finding
love it.
your authentic self. And because you were talking about imposter syndrome, and I see that a lot with people who come in, and even with my career of instructing, people come in and they feel like they have to be someone else, or they have to play the role of someone else. And when you really start to peel back the layers of people's stories, they have been told by so many people, you have to be this way, you have to be that way. There's not enough of you to go around to appease what everybody else wants you to do.
Yeah, there's no way.
So that's really interesting, but that's good stuff. And talk to us about, you got into money. Talk to us about money blocks, because I know you talk about that on YouTube channel, which we'll get to momentarily, but talk to us about money blocks.
Yeah. So I think about money blocks as I came up with this term called competing commitments, because I kept seeing it time and time again, where someone would say one thing like, oh, I want to build a successful business. And then they would do something opposite in their behaviors. So like they'd say, I want a 6-figure business. And then they would sit all day on Facebook and, get on Facebook with the intention to market themselves. And then they would go down the wormhole for 6 hours and do something different. Yeah. Or, they just had all these procrastination and self-sabotage things going on. And so I thought, this is interesting. And what I came to realize is when your conscious and your unconscious are battling against each other, your unconscious is always going to win, because it's 95% of you. And your unconscious is made up of beliefs that got programmed when you were really young. Like even in utero, they say now you can start to pick up on some of this, but it's like 0 to 7, you're like a sponge absorbing everything around you. And you start to believe certain things, and what you believe, you create in your reality to reinforce the belief. And so until you get conscious of that belief, you can't consciously choose to create anything that you want to create. And most people don't know. It's like, you've got to start here if you want to be successful and feel good in life, because until you get rid of those unconscious blocks, you can't make a lot of money. So money blocks are just money-based competing commitments where, you don't feel good about either the way you make money, the amount of money you have, anything around money. So your relationship to money feels blocked in some way. And most people aren't aware that this is the case. Like they'll go, I don't have any money blocks. And then, let's say they have a lot of money in the bank and they're like, I don't have any money blocks. But then you start to dig in and they're working way too much and they're feeling stressed and burnt out. That's a money block. Because in an abundant world where you're tapped into wealth consciousness, money flows to you easily. And so you don't need to work 15 hours a day to make your business fly. You don't even need to make, in quotes, anything happen. You don't force and you don't hustle and you don't grind. It's a very different thing. And so I've never met a person that doesn't have money blocks, because we all get mixed messages, just like you're talking about with the unmasking. We're told a lot of stuff that we should want or should be or should do or should have. And so we start to develop these ideas around what's okay for us. And so I created a quiz around it, discovering the top 3, which is money is bad, money is scarce, and money causes stress. And so there are a lot of different thoughts and beliefs in each of these categories. And those are the overarching, where it's like, let's discover what's really operating and causing you to get the outcomes you're getting in the money world.
That's interesting what you said about the unconscious versus the conscious for just a moment ago. And then also what you're talking about with money, it's kind of funny when you think about it, because even imposter syndrome, money, very prevalent with that. We get clothes, we get all sorts of different things in life that we feel like, makes us. Social media doesn't help either. With it at all. Yeah. So talk to us about NFA-Money. First of all, that name, where did that name come from? Because you and I, when we connected earlier, we were talking about it, and you said people would message you like, you need to change that. Thanks.
Yeah. Luckily, I don't get it very often. Most people won't take the time, but when they do, I'm like, oh, they really don't like it. Yeah, exactly. And it's, it's great because it filters out people who I wouldn't connect with well, and they wouldn't work with me well.
That's true.
It's so fun. It comes from sports. So when I was a kid in high school, there was this opportunity to be on a rec league for volleyball. And I loved volleyball, but I was doing swimming full time. And so I couldn't be on the volleyball team and the swim team. And so I was like, Dad, you be the adult, because you had to have one adult. It was an adult volleyball league, but they only required one adult. So I was like, Dad, you be the adult and I'll get all my friends together and we will kick ass and win this tournament. And he's like, okay. So we did it. And I named our team NFA. And then of course we won the tournament. It was awesome. And
how old were you?
That was in high school. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was high school. And then every team that I was on after that, like I did triathlons and different things where I would have teams for sports competitions and I would name us Team NFA. And then one day I was coaching someone and I had named it NFA Transformation as my package, so it was no fucking around transformation to get you unstuck, basically. Mm-hmm. And so one day I was talking to this client, he's like, oh, it's so powerful working with you. You're like my tough love dad, but you're also really soft and sensitive. And it really works to help me share, what I'm stuck with. And I said, well, I'm not fucking around. I really care about your transformation, and it was like coming from my heart. And I shared this story and in a networking event, and they were like, that's good, and then I was like, ooh, I'm going to
say it so nice too.
Yeah. I know it sounds like it's like a bad word, but it sounds great.
Soothing, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And so I was like, I'm going to put this on my Instagram bio, NFA, no fucking around transformation. And this woman reached out, and she was like, her one part of her company is like helping people brand. She's like, I want you on my podcast, because I put no fucking around transformation, and then from food stamps to six figures. She's like, you have a great story. Like, let's talk. And she had been following me on social media. So she was the first podcast I was ever interviewed on. And then she was my first guest on my podcast that I started.
Oh, cool.
And during the podcast, she said, like, you need to brand your company that. And I was like, I hadn't thought of it, because at the time it was called Amanda Barrientez Institute. And it was ABI coaching, which now knowing as a marketer, that made no sense, because people had no idea what that meant. But I thought it made sense.
Starting.
Totally. And so I was like, I stayed up literally all night thinking, like, am I really going to change my company name to have the F word in it? Like, I couldn't sleep. I was so excited about it and also scared. And I was like, I woke up in the morning and I'm like, done, I did it. And so I just went for it, and it's been that name ever since.
That's pretty cool. Like, when I first saw your information and saw that, I was like, oh, that's cool. But I got to find out, like, what are the origins of that name? And yeah, I definitely think that was a pretty catchy name there. And tell us a little bit about NFA-Money.
Yeah. So the heart of NFA-Money is about helping people, really deeply love themselves and have money confidence. And what I think about money confidence is that it's that you have the ability to create money under any circumstances on your terms, doing what you enjoy, and you feel good. So it's the outcome of being aligned and really connecting to loving yourself and doing what you love in the world. And so it's about, zone of genius work, and uncovering your unconscious blocks, and letting go of imposter syndrome, and really finding what causes you to tick. It's like, what is it that wakes me up in the morning and has me inspired? And how do I exchange value in the world to create money and build my wealth doing that? That's really what NFA-Money is about. And it, in the mantra of NFA-Money, it's like, NFA radical responsibility. Like, you are responsible for creating your reality. Let's make it awesome.
I like that. And if people want to find out more about NFA-Money, where can you send them to?
NFAmoney.com.
Simple.
So that's very simple. So NFAmoney.com, they'll find all kinds of cool stuff there. If they want like a access to a whole bunch of a training, go to NFAmoneyformula.com. Also, I release tons of YouTube videos all the time on these topics, like money blocks and imposter syndrome and money confidence and law of attraction and all of the cool stuff on NFA-Money at YouTube. So all the things NFA-Money.
If you go to the website, it's got tons of the YouTube links in there. And let's talk about that, because you mentioned earlier, part of your story was that podcasts were very instrumental in kind of getting you to where you are. And you went that route for a little bit. And then now you have a YouTube channel, NFA-Money. So talk to us about like your journey in podcasting, the interviews you've been doing with podcasts, and then talk to us about your YouTube channel and how you got into that.
Yeah, I actually, when I started podcasting, I did both YouTube and podcasts at the same time, but I focused my conversation on the podcast. And so YouTube was like a side note. And so YouTube takes very specific strategy to grow. And so, I didn't have very many subscribers. And in 2022, I was like, I'm going to switch to just focusing on growing YouTube. So in my podcasting journey, it was amazing. I did a solo cast every week and an interview every week. And I built it up to, I think I have around 185 or 200 episodes. And, in 55 countries, and had tons of downloads, really successful. And I loved it. And then I just, I always follow my inspired path. And I was like, I'm ready to grow YouTube. So I decided I'll just leave that there for a while and pivot to YouTube. And here we go. I tell my clients a lot, narrow your focus to expand your freedom. And most people take on too much. And so one of my 2021 mantra for the year was work less, make more, have fun. And so as I was refining what I was doing over the course of that year, by the end of the year, I was like, okay, it's time to drop the podcast because I want to focus on YouTube. And to do both it splits my attention in certain ways. And so I just decided to transition it to YouTube. So, it's just been the last few months that I'm starting to hyper focus on YouTube and grow it and learning all the strategies there that are very different than podcasting.
I feel like you were talking directly at me. I feel like it's almost like you're calling me out, because it's like, I started mine, and you are absolutely right. Like, peek behind the curtain over here. It's I started and I said, I'm going to podcast, and I'm going to have a YouTube channel, and I'm going to have Twitter, and I'm going to have Instagram and LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
And it's like, you run yourself there, and you really don't put enough effort into one. So I went the opposite route. I pulled back on YouTube to focus more on the podcasting, but now I'm like, I need to do something with YouTube.
Yeah.
I've really done nothing with it. But what are some of the biggest changes you've noticed for someone out there like myself or a listener? But if you want to start getting into the world of YouTube, what are some of the tips and tricks that you've learned along the way compared to just hitting record, converting, and downloading?
It's been intriguing to realize how different it is. And when you think about like any social media or, content platform, it's like, what is the purpose of Instagram versus Facebook versus LinkedIn versus podcasting versus YouTube? Like, they're different, And so I think part of the hard thing is that initially I learned to repurpose content and hit all the platforms and, like be everywhere. And yes, that's good in certain ways because you are everywhere and people see you everywhere. It doesn't grow as well because those platforms are different and you're speaking a different language in a certain way. So what I've really learned is like, okay, you got to speak to that specific platform and use the strategies to grow on those platforms specifically, so like, for example, and it's funny because Instagram is one of my favorites and I'm very business-like on Instagram. And when I post like one personal thing, it's like the most likes and views ever. Because that's what Instagram is. They want to know like who you are, not what you do. And I mostly post what I do there. It's like I'm teaching and I'm not going to stop because that's what I love to do. And that's the way I'll use the platform. Yet, I don't have that many followers in terms of how many years I've been there. And I'm okay with that because I have a very powerful following of high quality people. So I think that's a tip for people to know too, is like, don't worry so much about the numbers. Don't worry about anything, actually. Don't worry about the numbers. Focus on why you're there and what you're bringing and how you're serving. So the interesting thing with YouTube is that to get people engaged, you've got to have a different strategy than podcasts because you want to focus on serving and bringing value. To get them hooked in to make sure they keep watching is very different than a podcast. Like, podcasting is all about storytelling and long storytelling and getting, it's like you have a captive audience who's listening and usually probably double tasking and, multitasking, doing all kinds of things while they're listening. YouTube people, they can do that too, but most people are sitting and watching it. And so you got to hook them and you got to keep them engaged the whole time, which is very different than podcasting, And so learning that, I'm like, oh, well, no wonder my channel wasn't growing. It's like, I just assumed like, oh, I put it out there and people will come. It doesn't, yes, law of attraction helps you and you still need to be intentional about how to use that space effectively.
Yeah. No, that's really, because someone had told me early, they said, yeah, when you do your episodes and you convert them over to YouTube, just create like a cover art and have that.
Yeah, that's like, what I did too.
Yeah, I was like, this doesn't.
That's what I used to do. Yeah, it doesn't work well.
It didn't work like I wanted it to. And every week I was just like, this is the week. I start with I was very accidental versus intentional with it. I was like, I just hope it takes off. But I definitely relate to you on that. And if they want to find you on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, any of those, where can you point them to?
There, it's all of my handles are NFA-Money. So if they type in NFA-Money to Google, they'll find like all the connections, or just go to NFAmoney.com and they'll find all the good stuff there. Okay.
Now the time this episode drops, we're approaching middle of April. This is going to be around tax season.
Ooh.
At IRS right around the corner. What money tip, if you could give out 3 tips to help people use their money wisely, whether it's invest, budget, what have you, what would those be?
That's a great question. Always think about ways to have your money make money for you. So the difference between people who stay stuck in not making the money they want to make and working too hard and people who have wealth building over time is that the people who build their wealth over time have a wealth consciousness mindset where they're always thinking, how do I have my money make money for me? Instead of how do I spend my money as fast as I can on things that are fun right now, yeah. And so it's this idea of how can I create multiple passive streams of income? And so here's an example. When I was on food stamps, I got a tax return that year. And with that tax return, I invested the money. And that investment grew and grew and grew. And then I reinvested and reinvested and reinvested. And it's just made money for me over the years, more and more and more and more. And I accumulate my wealth. So that's one tip, like have the mindset of how can my money make money for me? How can I create passive streams of income? And I don't care if it's $5, start with $5 if that's all you have. Mm-hmm. Like get into the habit of investing your money. Put your savings on autopilot. That is a really powerful habit. So make sure that you're always saving some percentage of money out of every income that you get. And I don't care if it's that your grandma sends you $100 in the mail, save some of that money. And so just get in the habit of saving at least 10% of everything that comes in, and then get in the habit of investing at least 10% of everything that comes in. So setting yourself up for success. And then the third would be to up level that every quarter. So your brain doesn't freak out when you stretch it just a little bit at a time. So you don't miss in your budget 10% and you get used to that for 3 months and then you up it again. So let's say you're saving $100 a month. Then in 3 months, you're going to save $110 a month, right? Because your brain won't even notice the difference. So it's not going to miss that $10. And you keep doing that every quarter and you'll have this accelerated wealth building over time. And then you have what I created a money magnet account. So instead of an emergency account, because if you label it emergency, you're going to create an emergency to take the money. Instead, you label it as a money magnet account, and then it magnetizes more money your way. And you just keep adding to it, adding to it, adding to it.
It is true. We look at I've been guilty of that before. We look at emergency funds and it's like all gone.
Yeah, it happens every time.
Yep.
Whereas if you create a money magnet account, you just think of it as magnetizing more money, and you always want 3 to 6 months of living in that account. So you build it up to that. And then when your lifestyle changes and you up your lifestyle, add more money to it, get it to that, and then just let it keep magnetizing money. It's really cool because it signals to the universe that you're responsible with money, and it attracts more your way automatically.
Well, you also mentioned you recently got married. So congrats. Congrats on that. Looking back at your journey that you talked about, what would you say is the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself?
That I am so incredibly powerful. Like it's amazing when you learn that, and it's funny to say out loud. It like makes my eyes fill up with tears because I didn't know I was powerful. Like I felt so disempowered in so many ways. And when I realized like we are all so much more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. Mm-hmm. And if we could just drop all those masks we were talking about and tap into universal laws and like there are answers, right? I always thought like, there's no answers. How do I live a successful life? Like, where are the answers? And there are answers. It's much easier than people think. And first it's acknowledging like you are powerful and you're creating your reality, whether you love your reality or you hate your reality, you're creating it. So I always tell people your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. So if you don't like what you're getting on the outside, you've got to transform what's within. That's ultimate power. And so I love knowing, how vibrant and light and letting yourself shine your light and just allowing yourself to expand your fullest potential. That's the best thing I've learned and on this journey so far.
I had a conversation with someone a couple of days ago, and we were talking about how we live most of our life based off other people's expectations. But at the end of the day, not to sound morbid, when you're on a deathbed, those people aren't around you. And it was your life that you lived. How old would you say you were when you were truly born and started to live your life?
It's such a good question. Wow. I would say it started around 37. Wow, it was like 37-ish. I started waking up, and I would say in the last I'm 44. So in the last 2 years, like at 37, I started having that idea of like, something's not right. Like I need to make some changes. I got to do something different. And I started shifting and opening and expanding. And in the last, I like that you said that, because actually it was on my 42nd, so no, 41st birthday. I had this amazing experience with a group of people, and I like was doing this meditation, and in the meditation, I like saw myself being reborn. And it was like, this is your time to shine type of thing, you know? And so it was like 41. So it was late for me, you know, it was like, I don't know if that's late or early, but for me, I'm like, I think that's pretty long time in my life. And it's just been this, you know, like expansive growing experience since I've made the decision to become a seeker of consciousness and go like, I choose to learn and grow and take what that brings, because it's not like the easiest path, you know, like you're going to get faced with all of your shadows, and you're going to get faced. I think entrepreneurship is one of those things that brings up all your doubts and fears and insecurities. So it's like a path of discovery. And a lot of people are pretty comfortable and they don't necessarily want to do that. You know, like they don't opt into, let's grow all the time and dive deep and have deep conversations at all point in time. Exactly. Yeah. So for me, it was really like, it's been in the last, you know, it's been later in my life.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good answer. It's funny too, because like we don't want people to know we fail, but nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy how that is. But end of the day, when all is said and done, and somebody mentions you like 50 years from now, what do you want your legacy to be?
That I made, that I helped people love themselves. I mean, like the more people that I help fulfill their purpose and to do that, you got to love yourself. Like that's the juice, you know. It's like people being like, wow, Amanda was a shining light in the world and she really helped me love myself more and discover what I love doing. And you know, the money piece comes with that. It's like, it's true wealth. Like when you love yourself and you feel like you have a magic wand to create whatever you choose, and you feel fulfilled and free, and you get to do what you were born to do in the world. That's awesome. So helping people do that, that's the way.
Powerful. Yeah. Okay. Well, what final comments do you have for all of our listeners out there?
I would say, remember how powerful you are. And the reason I say remember is because you were born that way and you forgot. So tap back into your power, because it's always been there and you just need to reawaken to it. Yeah.
We all have glimpses of it and we tend to tuck it back away, but
yeah,
that's good advice. It's really good advice. Well, ma'am, I can't thank you enough for taking time to do this. It was awesome connecting with you previously and having you back on here. One more time, they want to find out more about you. Where can they go?
Yeah, go to NFA-Money.com.
All right. Well, ma'am, thank you so much. And folks, that is going to conclude this episode of the Shadows Podcast.